This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 410 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Wotzko, and on today's episode we have a special guest to talk about Dortmund's 3-0 win against Union Berlin, Sunday's duel against Borussia Mönchengladbach, and to answer some of your listener questions. And later in the show we will be joined by James from the Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, to take a look at Thursday's Europa League opponents from Glasgow. So now I'm excited to introduce the host of the Ruhr Nachrichten BVB Podcast, Sascha Staat, at Sascha Staat on Twitter. Sascha, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me, Stefan. It's a pleasure.
I know. I'm so elated that when I invited you, it was obviously before the Union game, that Dortmund actually took all 3 points home. And not only that, Sascha, you were rewarded with the rarest of things. It's so rare you could sell it as an NFT. A clean sheet on the road in the Bundesliga. It was a 3-0 win, as I just said. Marco Reus with a brace, scoring in the 18th and 25th minute, and then Rafael Guerreiro with a nice tap in the 71st. Möwald had a goal in the 73rd minute, but it was ruled out by VAR. And now Dortmund have a 12-point advantage over the teams between 4th and 7th place in the Bundesliga. Not only that, also Bayern lost 4-2 to Bochum, but I'm not sure if we should contextualize that in any sort of way. So, Sascha, what are you making of this match where Marco Rose made some significant changes to the team, revert to a 4-2-3-1 with Manuel Akanji as a right back, with Mats Hummels as a center back yet again, and of course we had a double pivot with Witsel and Dahoud, and then of course Marco Reus back in number 10 position with Bellingham and Brandt as the wingers and Malen up front.
First answer which comes to mind is that I don't understand this team, to be honest. I don't get how you can lose at home to Leverkusen and they totally destroy you. And then 1 week later, you go to Union Berlin, which is a very good side. They had a good season so far. They're hard to beat at home. And you go there and you really show that you're up to the task. I don't get it, because I was in Frankfurt to start the year for the local radio in Dortmund, and I was doing the play-by-play, and I was wondering what the hell is going on. They were down 2-0. They should have been down 3-0 or 4-0 actually by half time. And then in the second half, actually in the last 15 to 20 minutes, they win the game. And then they beat Freiburg at home, I think 5-1 if I remember correctly. Then they get another win at Hoffenheim, a lucky win. But then, for whatever reason, they play like kids at home to Leverkusen, and then 1 week later they win 3-0. And you said before that it was the first game, the first clean sheet away from home this season, the first clean sheet away from home for Marco Rose as a coach, except for the cup win at Wien Wiesbaden, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So in the Champions League he didn't do it. In the Bundesliga, he wasn't able to do it. And now at Union Berlin, I just don't get this team, to be honest. I don't get it, because they have the ability and the quality to beat any team in the league, also Bayern Munich. But I just don't get how they lack this consistency. It's hard to understand for me.
Yeah, so what I found very interesting is what Mats Hummels said to DAZN after the game, and I'm only quoting this from Sport 1 and Kicker and whatnot, because I, obviously being in Philadelphia right now, do not have access to DAZN. But he basically said that there weren't 4 players against Leverkusen with a vested interest in stopping counterattacks, and that they should have listened to the coach instructions more carefully. And then he also said that against Union Berlin, Rose still reacted with a double pivot that added stability, because there were 4 or 5 players to defend after turnovers. And he then said, let's be real, you can't survive in the Bundesliga when you only have 2 or 3 players secure the backfield. So I think there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, that Hummels clearly said that the players obviously did not listen to whatever the instructions to Rose are, but also the changes and reactions of Marco Rose himself. Because I think if we look at the Leverkusen game, you can really see how comical Dortmund's defending was at times, right? How unserious they were in trying to defend Leverkusen's main strength, which is the counterattack. And I think the Wirtz goal, the second goal that Leverkusen scored, was an absolute world-class beauty. But nevertheless, Dortmund also just allowed it very clumsily. So what do you make of Hummels, who maybe, I don't know if he's the vice captain, but obviously a very important voice in the locker room, says things like that so drastically after the game?
I think it's great. It's great for the team because they need a wake-up call. I mean, the first 3 games of the year, I already said that, let's forget the cup game at St. Pauli, but let's focus on the Bundesliga. I think that the main issue was they totally lacked players who really wanted to defend. And you can only win games and then you can go on and win titles if you start to defend. It's not working the other way around. You can't always score 2, 3 or 4 goals to win games. I mean, their attack is that good that most of the times they do it. But sometimes they just can't do it because it's too many chances they concede. It's too many good players on other teams who create chances, obviously. And I think it's good for the locker room and for the players to understand. And also, I think that the real captain of this team is not Marco Reus. The real captain of this team is Mats Hummels. I think we agree on this. I mean, he has given interviews in the past where he was crystal clear. And I think that's the only way to go forward. I mean, what to hide? It's obvious for everyone who's watching the games that they're not able to defend in a proper manner. I mean, if you look at the standings, they conceded 36 goals already. I mean, like this, it's impossible to finish first. I don't say that they are able to finish first if they had a slightly better defense. I don't want to assume it because maybe Bayern Munich would be more focused as well. We don't know that. But I mean, let's think about it. At the end of the season, it will be like 50 goals against. That's way
I think
too much.
they're on track. They're right now conceding on average 1.86 goals per game, and they're on track to score 55 or 56 goals, however you want to calculate it. And that's the worst record since the 07-08 season. So basically, it's the worst record since Thomas Doll.
Yeah, it says it all. I mean, if teams like, I don't know, Arminia Bielefeld or Wolfsburg, and they were on a slump, like, I mean, a really bad slump. Frankfurt, Bochum, Mainz, they all concede less goals than Borussia Dortmund. Why? Because players are not focused enough. I mean, the biggest example, or the best example, is probably Rafael Guerreiro, who's a world-class offensive player, in my opinion. One of the most underrated, maybe. Unfortunately, he is injured every now and then, but he's a very, very good player. But he already said, I would prefer to play in the midfield. But he has to play in the back four because there are no other options. I mean, Nico Schulz is not a real option. So he has to play on a position where he doesn't like to play. And then it's all about how professional a player is. And if a player is not 100% professional, he won't adapt to the position. He is some kind of freestyle player who's always moving up front. Okay, his teammates know it, but he has to work also on the other side of the pitch. It doesn't work like this. I think he's the perfect example. I don't want to put my finger on Rafael Guerreiro and say it's all on him, but I think he's a very good example on how a whole team has to work on both sides of the pitch.
Yeah, and I said it last week already. The Leverkusen loss reminded me of the Peter Bosz era when Peter Bosz got fired and then afterwards basically said, well, in order for my plan to work, 100% of the team needs to buy into that. And, you know, it's a counter-pressing style where you push up high, and if one cog in the machine doesn't work, the entire thing breaks down and you concede a boatload of counter-attacking goals. And that's pretty much the same thing that happened against Leverkusen, because in the first 5 or 6 minutes you saw the game plan from Dortmund was to press high, but at some point, not everyone is doing his job, being in a position, making the correct run, and all of a sudden you have the entire field open up because the spaces are just too far. And if we look at that, I think this is what Marco Rose wants to play as well, but I think he has come over the week to the realization that he can't do that, and I think the lineup changes speak to an adjustment that he's maybe for now taking a step back from his own philosophy just in order to stabilize Dortmund's midfield. Now, obviously, you can play the way you played against Union Berlin because they don't have the offensive firepower than maybe other teams. But nevertheless, the double pivot with Axel Witsel was a stabilizing factor in that way, as Hummels said it. And also, I think the style of play itself, the entire approach to the game was completely different because I thought that Dortmund had a very cautious approach. I think in the first half they had about 72% possession at some point, is where they played a very risk-averse style in possession and basically just tried to pounce on Union errors if the opportunity was there, but they weren't really trying to push forward with high-risk passes or anything. It was more like when you play FIFA and you're sitting on the 1-0 lead and you're just passing it among your center backs. That's what it looked like to me. So my question to you is: do you think there has been a more general rethink in the Rose camp, or do you think that we will go back to a more pressing style of play, more offensive style of play, attacking minded style of play very quickly?
I think it might depend on the opponent, actually. If you play against Augsburg, Hertha, or whatever team fighting against relegation, I think he will play a more offensive style. But if he knows that the opposing team is a quick team like Leipzig, Leverkusen, Union Berlin can also be quite quick, I think he will choose this approach, which he chose on Sunday, because what I like about it is that he learned quickly right now, because after 1 week he decided to change his philosophy, at least for one game. We don't know for how many games, but at least for one game. There are really stubborn coaches out there. Lucien Favre was probably the most stubborn coach ever.
I think Peter Bosz was very stubborn too.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also good if coaches stick to their system. But I think he understood that after a defeat like the one against Leverkusen, that the team needed some kind of stability. It was very important for the team also to have the clean sheet in the end. After the disallowed goal by Kevin Möwald, I think it was very good for the team to get the clean sheet. And I think if you now you're in a position where you actually, it's almost impossible not to finish second. Maybe they finish third if Leverkusen can keep this going for the rest of the season, but they're also playing Europa League, so I'm not quite sure about that. And probably they will finish in second position nonetheless. So I think they can try out a lot of things, and they can also still focus on buying the approach of Rose's tactics even more, that the players buy in more, like you said before. All the players have to buy into the system, and not all of them have. Maybe some of them just can't because it's not their style of play. Axel Witsel probably is just not made for this kind of football, and he will leave in the summer anyway, so that's a different matter. But still, you need the players to play this kind of football, and it's not 100% Marco Rose's squad. I mean, he didn't make up this team. He still needs some new players to trust, or let's say he needs to bring in players he trusts. Like Zakaria would probably have been a perfect player to come to Dortmund. Now he went to Juventus. It's a shame, but yeah, he needs to adjust the roster a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. So a couple of players I want to talk about in this game. Obviously, team captain, de facto team captain Marco Reus will brace two really well taken goals, and it was in the 18th and 25th minute. So I think those goals came at a very good time for Dortmund to settle them even more into the game. I think the first 5 minutes were a bit shaky but afterward they took a lot of control without really going forward. But I think very important for him to have a positive impact again, because I think he has been the aim of a lot of criticism recently, deservedly so, I would add. What do you make of him? Obviously, a lot of stuff was said about him playing in his favorite position, the number 10 position. What are you making of this performance from Marco Reus?
I mean, if you score a brace, you can't really blame the player, right? I mean, it's also very hard to judge him, because in the games where Dortmund is winning and he's scoring goals, everybody says, yeah, the team played well. So nobody's really praising Reus as much as they should, maybe. And when they're losing, it's all on him. Of course, he's the captain of the team, so he will get a lot of blame. That's how it works. But I think in the end, his season overall is still quite decent. I mean, he has had worse seasons, and it's also been quite a smart decision not taking part in the European Championships last summer. So to be honest, I hope that he will not go to Qatar in December and just stay in Dortmund and focus on the end of his career. I mean, probably has 2 more seasons left in the tank, because he's been injured quite often. And at some point, I think it might be smart also to have him come from the bench.
Yeah.
So that he can get a rest.
Exactly what I said last week. Exactly that. Especially when Gio Reyna is back, you need to rotate more, because honestly, he looks overplayed.
Yeah, and I think if you can sell it to him, if you can sell it to the media and to the people going to the stadium, I think the people going to the stadium, they will understand anyway.
Yeah.
But if you can sell it to the media and to himself, I think it will be very good for, maybe it can extend his career at the club for 1 more season.
Maybe.
You know, it's not like, it might be, but he also has to understand that he's not the same player he used to be. He's not the player he used to be 5 years ago. He had some more injuries, but I still think if you look at it, okay, 21 games, 7 goals, 8 assists, good so numbers. 15 points in 21 games, it's all right. But he's playing all the time. Let's not forget, he's playing all the time. So, and maybe the load was a little bit too much. So, I think it would be good for him to focus on having games where he knows he has to produce, like this one at Berlin. I think he knew he had to have a good game, and he showed up. So what to say? Yeah.
Exactly what you just said. So maybe I'm obviously watching the Philadelphia 76ers these days, and they played the Cavs this weekend, and Kevin Love checked into the game, and he's obviously, I think he's 34, so he is used to be sort of the right hand man of LeBron James when he was playing there, but now he's a rotation guy, and he basically said that right now he is enjoying basketball more than ever, which I find remarkable, and maybe that's the way to sell it to Marco Reus as well. Just a pitch from my end here. But there's another player I wanted to point out to before we maybe move on, or not move on, but to another controversy, and that's Dan-Axel Zagadou, because I think Julian Brandt said, was it to Bundesliga or someone, that he was maybe his man of the match after this comical and horrendous mistake after Leverkusen. I think it was very important for him to bounce back right away. I think having 3 learned center backs on the field overall helped Dortmund, especially when it comes to set piece defending and whatnot. But nevertheless, it's not easy for him to come back from injury and then have to readjust to different backlines all the time, because this time it was Mats Hummels to have his direct partner. And of course, you always, as the left-sided center back, have to cover for Rafael Guerreiro as well. So my question to you is, what are you making of this performance? Because to me, he played really well. He made smart decisions. I don't recall any horrendous mistakes this time. And obviously a drastic improvement from the Leverkusen performance, which I think is very important for him to show.
Well, apart from this comical goal against Leverkusen, he had not such a bad game against Leverkusen. He had this mistake which led to the first goal of Bayer, but generally his game overall was not that bad. But of course we are looking at this one mistake. And 1 week before, I was watching the amateur team in the 3rd division, and I was watching the last half an hour, and he conceded a penalty shot to Osnabrück in the dying seconds of the match, or like 10 minutes to go, and then in the end Osnabrück was still able to equalize the game. But I think we have to be a little bit patient with him because he's been out for a long time. We all know that he's able to play on a high level. Maybe he's still not as consistent as we would love him to be, because we all see the great ability he has. I mean, probably everyone who's watched him play loves the guy. I mean, he's also a quite humble and nice guy.
Yes.
So he's a whole package. He is skillful when it comes to the size he has, and also obviously the weight he has, because he's a big guy. He's strong with his head. He understands the game. He's not as slow as you might think. So he's a very good player, and he's still quite young, but he's been injured a lot of times. So I would like to forget the Leverkusen performance, basically, to be honest, because it can happen. It was just like one fluky goal. I mean, a horrible mistake, all right, but he even showed up at the rest of the game against Leverkusen. It's not like he stopped to play the whole game, and the other goals they conceded, it was not his fault at all. So if you watch the game against Union Berlin, you saw already that he's up to the task. So I would like to see that he's going to start maybe 10 games in a row to judge him even better, because after such a long layoff because of injury, players need time. Usually you say, okay, if he's been out for 6 months, he needs another 6 months to get back to his old form. Obviously with defenders, it's a little bit tougher, because if they make a mistake, it usually ends up at the back of the net. But for strikers or offensive midfield players, you can take your time. But with him, it's not that easy. But they need him right now. So I think Marco Rose should just go on and trust him, because he's the future of Borussia Dortmund if they want to, and if he wants to. And I think basically both sides want him to be the future of the defense of Borussia Dortmund, along with Niklas Süle. So
yeah, I mean, they will rebound every every ball they get. Speaking of rebounds, long-suffering Sacramento Kings fan El Coolray asks, what happened with Torgan Hazard that he wasn't with the team? Interesting question, Sascha, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what to answer, to be honest, because I didn't notice. I just can tell you that I'm not convinced by Torgan Hazard at all. I wasn't convinced that he was going to be a game changer when he joined Borussia Dortmund, because I think he had one good season at Borussia Mönchengladbach and that's it. So I think he had one season where he scored in double figures. So, all right, he's a decent player, a good player, not a very good player. So he's not a player who's getting you over the hump to pass by Bayern Munich to win the league title. So they paid 25 million euros for him. Okay, they also paid 25 million euros for Nico Schulz. That's a different case. But I don't know what has happened to him. I haven't read anything about it. I haven't heard anything about him from my colleagues at the Ruhr Nachrichten.
Well, your colleagues at the Ruhr Nachrichten reported, and I think Marco Rose said it after the game, is that he was not included in the squad due to his performance on the training ground. And
all right, okay, that's interesting. I didn't read it because I was rather busy on the weekend, but still. Yeah, I can absolutely understand that he might not show up on the training ground.
I thought I'd get the experts from the Ruhr Nachrichten here, and then I have to read you your own newspaper, basically. All right, yeah, well, but no, yeah, that's that's what happened.
Yeah, sorry,
it's okay. This is what happened, which is what I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously that happened in the context of Gio Reyna being sick, and I thought that Dortmund, toward the final, 30, 25 minutes of the game, they looked rather gassed to me. And I thought that a good substitution here and there could really help them out, especially Julian Brandt struggled quite a bit. He had a couple heavy touches. To me, he would have been a prime candidate for a substitution. To be honest, I wouldn't say he had a bad game overall because he didn't. But nevertheless, Torgan Hazard would have come in handy still to bring him on. And I think in the end was Moukoko, Khani, and Tigges who were the substitutes. So, I think this is a nice signal to send the rest of the team, especially after that turbulent week. Let's call it that. What do you make from that decision to exclude a player and Torgan Hazard? Usually not a player that I would suspect being a lazy player, to be honest, or a professional player to still exclude him from the matchday squad despite all the other ailings and injuries.
Yeah, if you take in consideration all the injuries, it's quite a sign to the rest of the team, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the coach says, okay, if you're not performing on the training ground, I just can't take you to the game. It's not possible. So I think it's a big sign. And I excuse myself for not having the information. Maybe next time you should just invite one of my colleagues. No, sorry. Anyway, I just think that it's a very good sign because now every player should be aware that it really, really, really matters what you're doing during the week. Because if you don't, all right, if you have, 200 training sessions a year, you can't perform at 100% of all those 200 training sessions. I think it's not possible. But if you have 3 or 4 training sessions during a week, I think especially towards when you get closer to the game, to the match day, you have to give 100% in training. Maybe you can have a day off in your mind. Sometimes your mind is just not at 100% and you can't perform. That happens to every player, even to the best players, even to Ronaldo or Messi. It happened in the past, I guess. Okay, maybe with them it's a little bit different, but you know what I mean. So, but you have to have the right approach in your mind, and maybe Torgan Hazard didn't have it. So it's a very good sign for all the other players, because lately we talked about that maybe, because Marco Rose had so many injured players and all the players, they knew they would play anyway.
Yeah.
And now with Gio Reyna back and now with other players coming back, it's not the same anymore. So now Haaland will be back, in a week or so, I guess. So then it will be even more different. Maybe Daniel Malen will find himself back on the bench and not starting the games anymore. So they will be deeper on offense, and they will also be a little bit deeper on defense once Thomas Meunier is back. Emre Can is now back. So Marco Rose has more options, and I think that's important for all the players because it pushes all the players on a higher level. So that's quite normal. I see.
Dortmund, I think in national media and overall has been dubbed Wohlfühl-Oase in German, translating to feel-good oasis or wellness oasis or whatever you want to call it. But I feel like that's a nice reaction to counter that narrative a little bit that players need to be a bit more on their toes in order to feature. So I agree with you. That was a really good signal. And I think it's time now to relay a couple of listener questions. Tom on Twitter asks, why have BVB players and Rose struggled to implement coaching tactics, pressing, defense, etc.? And he also wants to know, what does Sascha think BVB transfer strategy will be in the summer to fix the team's inconsistencies? So, no pressure to answer that, just, but still, I too would like your opinion on that.
Okay, first, regarding the transfer strategy, it all depends on how much money they get for Erling Haaland and if they get money at all, because he might stay another year at Borussia Dortmund, we don't know. If you get like 80 million euros for your best player, and he's your best player, I think there's no doubt about it, then you can invest 30 million euros twice for having good players coming in with the right mentality, with the right skill set. But it's not easy because every good club is looking for those kind of players. Borussia Dortmund is not the only club looking for good players. And when other clubs know they just got 80 million for a player, of course they will also hire the price. So you have to be smart, getting the right players. I mean, we all know what kind of players they want to have. They would like to have a new left back instead of Nico Schulz. They might be looking for a right back to replace Thomas Meunier, or maybe to back him up, because we don't know what's going on with Matteo Moret. He's a very talented player, but he's also been injured for a long time now. He's working his way back, but we don't know when he will be back at 100%, and then he will need time, just like Dan-Axel Zagadou. So we don't know. Then they will probably look into a player similar to Zakaria, who I mentioned before, who joined Juventus from Borussia Mönchengladbach, to replace Axel Witsel, because Witsel was a very good player for one season. He was a decent player for the second season, and then he fell off. I don't know why. Of course, his style of play was adapted very much to the style of play of Lucien Favre, so it was difficult when the coaches changed for him. He doesn't fit into this kind of football anymore. He's not that fast. He's never been, probably. He's a great strategist, to be honest. But in this kind of football Marco Rose wants to play, it doesn't work anymore. So they need a player who is more physical than Mo Dahoud and maybe more skillful than Thomas Delaney has been. You know, maybe that's a good example. They need a kind of player who's in between the two of those. And that's why I like Zakaria so much. He's now gone, but they need a player like this.
Yeah, may I butt in here? We have a listener question that's sort of on that topic. I sadly can't find it on my sheet right now, but someone has asked about Emre Can's ball watching. I think it was for the Möwald goal. When I texted you, I said you were I think you said on the Ruhr Nachrichten podcast that you were sort of wrong in your estimation about Emre Can's sort of skill set or his performances since joining Dortmund. But I do remember sitting with you in the VIP lounge of the Dortmund game in the Europa League against Liverpool, and he was playing for Liverpool back then, and you told me how absolutely disastrous you think he is, basically. I'm paraphrasing. So my question to you is, considering the huge amount of wage that Emre Can is taking up right now, should Sebastian Kehl and Michael Zorc, whoever, try to just tell him, dude, we're not planning with you anymore. We're looking for a player with a, different profile or whatnot, that in the long-term future, your name is not really included on Dortmund's team sheet anyway. And, he said he wanted to join from Juventus because of more playing time. Now, I think this thing is not working out. He is not becoming my favorite player ever. I'm going to say that I'm a little biased against Emre Can, because to me he has made too many screw-ups for the veteran that he supposedly is. So what's your opinion on that player? Because I think if you're talking about the player that's between Dahoud and Delaney, and I agree with you, that's the sort of player that Dortmund need. Is Emre Can the guy you need to let go in order to free up the wages that you need for that certain player?
The thing is that he actually could be the player, but the other thing is that he's never really showed that he can be this kind of player. He should be with the wages he gets.
In theory, he's exactly that player, but in practice, he is not.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because, as you said, he takes a lot of wages. He's a very expensive player, and every now and then he's out with a muscle injury for like 2 or 3 weeks. So that doesn't help. Players need consistency. They need to play all the time, basically, to be at 100%, to find their rhythm. So it's not that easy. And yeah, he also, I remember when last season, I think he conceded like 3 or 4 penalties to opposing teams. Maybe it was early this season. I don't remember. It were so many stupid fouls in the penalty area where I thought that, like, geez, what's going on with him? He should know better, because, as you said, he's a veteran.
Yeah, he makes a lot of brain-dead decisions, and his man marking is atrocious sometimes, especially when it comes to set pieces. Just think back to the Sevilla away game.
Yeah, because I think he's very motivated, but he's just not good enough. I mean, all the motivation in the world doesn't help if you just don't have the quality. I mean, I'm also very motivated to be the World Football Player of the Year, but I just can't do it because I'm a shitty player. So all the motivation I might have would never pay off. And I think Emre Can maybe just overestimates his abilities. So he wants to get to the tackle, but he's too slow. Or maybe he wants to play the pass, but he's not accurate enough. So all in all, I think he's overrated, and I feel sorry for it because I thought he might be a good fit into Borussia Dortmund. I saw him play at Juventus, and I think he played rather well there. I follow a lot of Serie A, but Serie A is a different league. It's much slower, so it's much more tactical as well. Maybe in the Premier League, he was perfect because he's a physical player. He should have never left the Premier League, I guess. But at Borussia Dortmund, where you have to control the ball for most of the games, except for the games against Bayern Munich, you usually have to control the ball. Like 75% of possession is Borussia Dortmund. He's just not the right player. He could have been the player between Dahoud and Delaney, but he just isn't that kind of player. But it will be extremely difficult to offload his contract because, I don't know, I think he makes like 8, 9 or 10 million euros a season, and no other club should be this naive to take on this kind of contract.
No, I totally agree. That's just the trap that a lot of teams like Dortmund are in, because they need every big signing and every high paid earner they add to their squad needs to be a player that works out 100% of the time, and that's impossible. I think Nico Schulz is maybe the perfect example for that, because Dortmund don't have a big backer like, say, Bayer or the Volkswagen AG or any other where you can just endlessly make mistakes and then rectify them when they don't work out, and then add Max Kruse or whatnot. Dortmund don't have that luxury, especially when you try to compete with Bayern Munich, and every of your transfers needs to be a hit, and unfortunately it's impossible to do. Obviously, I think I anticipated Nico Schulz maybe not being the right fit, but it's unfortunate, but I also agree with you. We have another question from BVB Cincinnati. First of all, condolences on that Super Bowl loss. Heartbreaking. He asks, will Kiel go and buy a starter level quality center back if Akanji leaves, or will they go for a center back that is more of a backup? Now, I don't quite understand this question, because they did just get Niklas Süle, and we've discussed it on the last episode that in my mind he is the replacement and upgrade over Akanji next year, because I do anticipate Akanji leaving. Obviously not 100% guaranteed. He could also, let his contract run out and leave on a free transfer next season. But nevertheless, Dortmund are linked with Nico Schlotterbeck very highly. I don't know if you have asked your Ruhr Nachrichten colleagues about that. What are the chances that a guy like Schlotterbeck, for example, is playing in the Dortmund shirt next season? And again, what do you think Dortmund need to do at the center back position on the transfer market?
We've talked about it in our last episode, and I agreed with my colleague Jürgen Kors that he's a very interesting and promising young player. He's also already been called up by Hansi Flick for the national team, and I think that he would be a great fit, but maybe not this summer, but next summer. In 2023, it might be a better decision to get him a year later. So you can either sell Manuel Akanji now for 30 million euros, more or less. We've heard rumors of Manchester United being interested in him, and you can use that money to buy Nico Schlotterbeck right away, or you say, okay, we can find a deal with Nico Schlotterbeck already, and we know that we will lose Akanji for free, but we also don't have to pay any kind of transfer fee for Nico Schlotterbeck because he's arriving on a free transfer as well.
Well, in your personal opinion, do you think that Dortmund can get Nico Schlotterbeck? Because there are a lot of rumors around him from other international clubs, and you said before that Dortmund are not the only team in the world trying to sign good players. So do you think, even though he's heavily linked right now, that this is even a realistic deal to make, or do you think that his talent maybe has even exceeded Dortmund's level? I don't know, just in the estimation of other teams with deeper pockets.
No, I don't think it has already. I mean, he's not playing on a world-class level in the Champions League every week. I mean, so I wonder what kind of clubs you have in mind, Stefan, if you say that it's a club with clubs with deep pockets. So which club could be more attractive to Nico Schlotterbeck at this point of his career than Borussia Dortmund, where he could team up with a national team player he knows in Niklas Süle, and B, the future core of Borussia Dortmund's defense, because Mats Hummels won't play for another 5 seasons. Hummels is 33 years old right now, if I'm not mistaken, so he will have 1 or 2 more seasons at best. So afterwards, it could be all Schlotterbeck and Süle and Zagadou. And we also have Somalia Koulibaly, who's said to be a very talented young player. So if we're talking about clubs like, I don't know, Tottenham, Everton, those kind of clubs, would it be more appealing to Nico Schlotterbeck to go there? Clubs who don't qualify for the Champions League every season at all. I mean, I don't remember actually when Everton has last qualified for the Champions League, but I mean, okay, he might be able to earn more money there, but then in Italy, is Italy interesting for Nico Schlotterbeck? I don't know, because the clubs in Italy don't have more money than Borussia Dortmund. I don't think so. And is he a player for Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, or Real Madrid? I don't think so. They won't get a player like him. So I think Borussia Dortmund is very appealing for the player. I don't know if you agree, but I think it's a very good choice for him.
I mean, if it's good enough for Niklas Süle, it should be good enough for Nico Schlotterbeck. Let's just put it this way.
Yeah.
You asked me whether I can think of a different club. No, which is why I invited you to answer that question. You just answered it. So let's move on. Obviously, I will have a segment about the Rangers game later, but nevertheless, we have Steve Berkowitz, who's asking more in a general term. What would it take for BVB to win the Europa League, but still qualify for Champions League next year? Obviously, if you win the Europa League, you are automatically qualified for the Champions League. To answer that question, but I think with a 12-point cushion right now, I feel like it will be very hard for Dortmund to give up a Champions League spot in the Bundesliga. We've
impossible.
Yeah, pretty much. We've just seen Dortmund defend well for the first time in a very long time, basically since that Freiburg game. With a different mindset. Obviously, Champions League season did not go as well as Dortmund had hoped. But that being said, I think until the sending off of Mats Hummels against Ajax in the home match, Dortmund had a very good chance of actually surviving the group. And maybe a couple of injuries for that Sporting away game also played a major key role. I mean, Nico Schulz literally was the guy who gave up the goal. That sort of was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, obviously, the Europa League group is still very tough, and Dortmund will have a lot of games in order to make it through. But let's take this question seriously, nevertheless, because Dortmund are still a very good team on European stage, and even though the Champions League group stage wasn't what they had hoped for, I still think that they are not that much of a different team that made it to the quarterfinal in the Champions League last season and really gave Manchester City a run for its money. So in order to answer Steve's questions, what do you think Dortmund's chances are in that competition, and how do you think they will approach it?
Well, first of all, they have 12 games left in the Bundesliga, just to get that clear. If they win half of those games, so that's 18 more points, they would finish on 64 points, so they will easily qualify for the Champions League in the Bundesliga. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So regarding the Europa League, I think they should approach it with, we want to win this competition at all costs. actually, at all costs, because it's the one international club title they're still missing, first of all, and it would be great for their club collection. And also, I think now with Rangers, maybe you don't have the best team when it comes to quality as an opponent, but it's a big name in European football. Still, it's Glasgow Rangers. So there's also some history as Stefan Klose in 97, a goalkeeper who won the Champions League with Borussia Dortmund back then,
and Claudio
played
Reyna
for Rangers afterwards. Yes, and Claudio Reyna. So yeah, I mean, there's some history regarding that. So I think it's a nice matchup. You have to advance. They're absolutely favorites to move on to the next round. And there are many good teams still waiting in this competition. So to me, it's like a sort of mini Champions League.
Yeah.
And I think if the stadium is back at 100% capacity for, I don't know, maybe not the next round, maybe in the next round it's 50%, but afterwards it's 100%, you have great matchups, historically great teams to play. I think the fire will be back. You have night games with the floodlights on. I mean, maybe against teams like, I don't know, who's still in the competition, Napoli.
Napoli play against Barcelona,
whatever.
which is very helpful for Dortmund, that two of the main favorites, I would say, are taking each other out. At least one of them.
Yeah, so, I mean, imagine in the next round you play against Barcelona. I mean, what do you expect from the Europa League? Everybody was blaming the competition some years ago, but now, I mean, and I still remember the last time that they played in the Europa League, or the last time they really played in the Europa League with Thomas Tuchel as the head coach, and we had this dramatic game in Liverpool. We all still remember it, and it was just an emphasis. It was just Europa League. So if you don't consider this competition as a series and a good competition to win, I don't know. And that should be the approach of the team, because they're out of the cup. They screwed it up in the Champions League horribly against average opponents like Sporting. I mean, no offense to them, but it's an average team. Yeah. So I think they should be highly motivated to go very far in this competition.
Yeah, I agree with that. So before I let you go, we have to preview. I'm afraid to say, because I will not have time on Friday or Saturday to preview that game. But quickly, Dortmund do play against Borussia Mönchengladbach. If I remember correctly, they won the reverse fixture. Gladbach just came off a 3-2 win against Augsburg, but before then they haven't really won much in the games before. They had a 1-1 draw against Arminia Bielefeld. They lost against Union. They lost in the cup very horribly 3-0 to Hanover and were counterattacked to pieces there. They also lost to Leverkusen. The only other game they won in this Rückrunde is against Bayern. The opening fixture, of course, against Bayern, because Gladbach always been against Bayern. So this is obviously yet another must-win game for Dortmund, because it's a home match. But it's also at the back end of a Europa League fixture. What do you expect from this game, quickly? And what Dortmund do? Let's say we have the Leverkusen philosophy and we have the Union philosophy on coaching approaches. Which one would you like to see, and which one do you expect to see? And I do expect Erling Haaland to be back in this, because I think the Rangers game will be too soon, but he should be back for that. And so will be Gio Reyna.
I expect probably a mix of both, but it will be very hard to find the right mix. I mean, it depends also a lot on the results against Rangers on Thursday, how they will approach the game on Sunday tactically. If they screw up against Rangers, the approach will be probably to destroy Borussia Mönchengladbach, and maybe they will have a different, more defensive approach if they win against Glasgow Rangers. And I think it would be at some point maybe even smart. I thought that during the first half of the Leverkusen game, before Leverkusen scored their second goal, that it might be smart to have the opposing team control the game. Let them play, because they're not used to it. If you let Borussia Mönchengladbach now play and Dortmund can start to counterattack, congratulations. It will be an easy win. So maybe you have to not just find a different approach when it comes to be more offensive or more defensive, but maybe also have the opposing team control the ball. And I don't think that Borussia Mönchengladbach will be able to find that many solutions against Borussia Dortmund. You mentioned their recent results. Yeah, of course, they went to Munich and won the game. And I still don't know how, because Jan Sommer, I think, if I have it in mind correctly, had a monster performance in that game. And they stole it, or he stole it, actually. And so, yeah, if you look at them, they conceded more goals than Borussia Dortmund. They scored 30 goals in 22 games. It's a dangerous team, but I think right now they're just not on a level anywhere close to Bayer Leverkusen. They're not anywhere close to Union Berlin also.
I mean, they're 13th in the Bundesliga. They're in no man's land. They're probably not really fighting for European spots, to be honest, and they're also not there in the relegation zone, so... I don't know what Adi Hütter...
It's just 4 points, It's just 4 points to the 16th place. So they still have to look at it and be sure that they win some more games. I don't think that they will end up in the second league. No chance, because the team is too good for that. But Max Eberl just stepped down as a, let's say, general manager of the team, or the sporting director, however you want to call it, because he just couldn't handle all this football shit anymore. Excuse my choice of words, but he just was fed up with the overall situation, and I can absolutely understand him. So there's a lot of things going on in Mönchengladbach, and I don't think they're stable enough. If you win against Augsburg 3-2 and you have to fight hard to beat them, I think it's crystal clear that Dortmund will be the favorites on Sunday, and I think that they will find the right approach. And probably after this win against Union Berlin, after the disastrous performance against Bayer Leverkusen, they will probably be on a roll right now. I expect Dortmund to be on a roll for the next few weeks, not for the rest of the season, obviously, but at least for 4 or 5 games, they will be on the roll.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, I just remembered that Dortmund, in fact, did not win in Gladbach earlier this season. There was a 1-0 loss.
No, they lost 1-0, I think.
Yeah, yes. Where Dahoud got sent off. And the key to that game is that Gladbach's players, and in a very Adi Hütter style way, if you think of his Frankfurt days, they just roughed Dortmund up, and Dortmund were really just shaken by it. I don't know if Gladbach can replicate that sort of performance, but it was a very chaotic game, and it was very wild. And the only concern I have about Gladbach is that I feel like that they are similar to Dortmund sometimes, a team that excels better against the high profile opposition of the Bundesliga, and then just slump around against other teams. But I think beating Augsburg sort of disproves that a little bit. Yeah. I don't know who will be available for that game, because there's a game in between, so there's no sense in talking much about it. But if I can get a scoreline prediction from you, then be my guest.
3-1 for Dortmund.
And the Rangers game?
I think they're superior, so much superior to Rangers that they will have a clean sheet, 2-0.
Okay. I'll take it. Sascha, it was a pleasure to have you on. I love your expertise, and it's nice to hear you as the pundit or the expert and not as the host for once. I hope you enjoyed that differing role as well. We also have a ton of German listeners, so if they don't already follow you and listen to your show, you're probably in best position to plug all that content. Where can they find it?
Basically on Twitter. That's the easiest way to follow me, at Sascha Staat. Very simple.
Fine. Yeah, well, you can listen. How many episodes do you have on the Ruhr Nachrichten Podcast now? It's over 300, right?
306. Tomorrow we will we will upload 307.
Yeah. So you're still a bit behind, but you're catching up.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah, I mean, the Ruhr Nachrichten BVB Podcast hasn't been around for as long as the Yellowwallpod, right? How many years in the running is that now?
We started in August of 2016.
Yeah. See, we've been around since the 2012 season, I think, or 2013 or so. So
hats off. 10 years.
Yeah, this is our 10th season now. And still going strong. Still having prime guests like Sascha Staat on. So
star journalist almost.
Yes. Sascha, thank you very much for coming on. I really enjoyed our discussion about Borussia Dortmund, and we will be back now with James to talk more about Rangers. All right, as promised, I'm back with James Forrest from the Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. I'm very excited to talk with you, James, now about this game. I just had Sascha Staat on, and he was talking about how Dortmund need to take this competition more seriously than any other competition. So you obviously didn't hear that part, but our listeners did, and I hope he created some excitement for that game. Certainly has me a bit more psyched. So, James, you are obviously the expert on Rangers, and I must admit I watch 0 to none Scottish football. What is the feeling at Ibrox right now going into this game on Thursday night?
Well, I certainly don't want to be called the expert. I don't want that bullseye on my back. I'm very happy to speak to you about this. It's exciting. It's exciting. It's definitely one of the biggest ties that we've had for a good long time on a European scale, and we've played against some big clubs in recent years. But this is a really exciting occasion for us. But one that we don't really have any real fear over, because we don't consider ourselves to be huge favourites for this game. We're realistic in that sense, or at least certainly I'm realistic about the chances of progression in terms of that, because Dortmund have a lot more money behind them in terms of squad and the type of players that you guys have got. But it's a win-win either way, I suppose, and to an extent, because we would still be disappointed if the tie was over after the first leg, provided that it was in Dortmund's favour, of course. You never know, we might win 5-0 in Germany, and then that would be rather astonishing. But yeah, it's very, very interesting to test ourselves and test the squad that we have against a lot of such well-known names in a European football context. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So for people like me who really not know much, who are the key players of this Rangers team? Obviously, you're looking at the strikers and whatnot, but I guess also in defensive midfield, usually where games are decided. So anyone you want to highlight? What is the groove of this team right now? Do you think this team has a good identity and is following the coach's instructions and working together as a unit? Are you feeling good about this team, or is it a bit of more turmoil going on right now?
It's been an interesting bit of time for us. When Giovanni van Bronckhorst arrived at Rangers, he had an excellent run of games up until our winter break, which happened after Boxing Day. We won every game in the league. We secured a qualification to this stage of the Europa League, and we had players who were really stepping up and playing really, really well. We had a difficult return to action after the winter break. We only got 5 points from a possible 12. A very disappointing Old Firm match, which I think was an important wake-up call for the players and the coaching staff, because it meant that afterwards we changed things up a bit. And I think there is a bit more of that identity in the sense that we're aware of what it is that we're trying to do. And it makes a lot more sense for us watching in the stands in terms of what the players are trying to do, what the coaches want to see in terms of a play style. Whether that's something that we see in these games against Dortmund, or not. I don't know whether Gio decides that he wants to do something slightly different for these specific games. I would be surprised though, because I think it's working well in terms of a good pressing game, which very much is led from the front, and our team right now is very much led from the front in terms of our main striker, Alfredo Morelos. He is absolutely our most important player at the moment, the way that he's been playing. He is very much the complete forward, scores goals, drops deeper to help try and influence the play, but has found a real energy level and has done very good things in this competition before. In 2019-20, he was the top goal scorer in the group stage. He thrives on the big competition like this. And being very aware that there's going to be a lot of people throughout the world watching this game, he will want to impress. So we have a lot of hope that he will be someone who will be an important player for us in terms of that. Other players that are important too, our captain, James Tavernier, who'll play at right back. He has a remarkable goal scoring and assist record for someone who plays in the back line for a defender. He's a penalty taker. He's very good from the penalty spot. He is good at getting forward and wanting to get crosses in. He's very attack-minded. And in the midfield, Joe Aribo is someone who has really improved a lot this season. If anyone watched the African Cup of Nations and saw Nigeria's games, then they would have seen just how good he has become in terms of an attacking midfielder. Although the way that we want to play now, it maybe leaves a little bit less emphasis on him in terms of being the important, attacking outlet. There's maybe more of an emphasis on players like Ryan Kent or perhaps Scott Arfield in terms of the wider attacking areas to provide that additional threat. We have a very, very good squad. Very happy, and it's a good depth of squad as well, because there will be guys who won't start the game who we feel could come onto the field and make a difference later on in the match if required. So we're very proud of our squad going into this game, and we expect them to certainly put up a fight at the very least.
How is Amad Diallo working out? Because I think he's sort of your right winger, if you will.
Well, Amad Diallo is a really interesting one, because obviously we're very, very aware of how talented he is. He scored after 5 minutes of his debut and his first appearance for us. And I think we had the idea that he would absolutely be someone who would play right wing every single game, and this kind of game would just be one that he would definitely thrive in. Our last couple of games where we've looked a bit better in terms of our overall play, he has not started. He's come off the bench because we've gone with Scott Arfield, who he's a different style of winger when he plays in the wing. He's the kind of player that can play a number of different roles. Arfield is more about running into the spaces that open up in the defence rather than having the ball at his feet. Whereas Ryan Kent, on the other side, he thrives in picking up the ball and running at a defender. So, there's different styles depending on what side that we look to attack. So I think if we're attacking down the left, Kent will be the player that will have the ball. If it's down the right, then we're more likely to see James Tavernier have the ball. If we go with that lineup, of course, because there's every chance that we may well say, for this kind of game, it's the kind of game that with the space that may well be afforded to run into, that Amad Diallo might thrive from that. So he may well start, but it wouldn't overly surprise me if he was one of those options to come off the bench in this game. I think there are more, in terms of star players and players who are on form, you are looking more to the front than the back. I think that's very fair to say. The defence, we are certainly in need of more options at centre back. We were hoping that Liam Balogun would be okay to play alongside Connor Goldson, but he picked up another injury, so there's a worry that he might not be able to play this game, in which case we would need to play Calvin Bassey, because our other central defender, Philip Helander, is not in the European squad. So we would need to go with Bassey, who's more of a left back than a centre back, I think people certainly believe. And that would put us at a bit more of a disadvantage in the defence if we had to go with Bassey as a centre back. As good a footballer as Calvin Bassey is, of course. But what's also important is we have Alan McGregor, who, anyone who sees the videos in terms of the Europa League, Twitter, in terms of, best saves of the group stage, Alan McGregor keeps popping up because he's the kind of goalkeeper that can pull out an amazing stop out of nowhere. Even into his 40s, he's still an excellent shot stopper. So, Dortmund may well have the opportunity to have a lot of shots, but they'll have to be very good shots to get past a very good goalkeeper in Alan McGregor as well. The key for me is who would be the holding midfielder and how do we play that? Whether it be John Lundstrom, who would play in that role. He's good at being quite tenacious, at wanting to win the ball back. And I think if he keeps that role quite simple, that'll work better for us in terms of doing that job.
I love how you point out his limitations that way.
less fancy stuff, the better. I think would be ideal from my point of view if he's playing that, because every time he keeps it simple, he always looks better for it in terms of in the central defence.
Do you expect Glenn Kamara next to him?
I think that's likely. I think that's a likely outcome in terms of given who would probably be available in terms of, again, injuries, etc. What would be interesting for me is whether Glenn Kamara would find himself playing slightly further forward and getting further forward as well. Because trying to understand what his best role is an interesting one. We've seen him play slightly deeper to play that holding role, and you almost think, well, that's what he's going to do. But I think, as part of the issue of our run of games was where we weren't playing so well was he just wasn't performing well. But if he's given a bit more freedom, that may well help him as well. So I would expect him to play. How he plays would be an interesting discussion point, though.
Yeah, so you've made it out of the Europa League group with Olympique Lyon, Sparta Prague, and Brøndby, which I think is a formidable Europa League group, if we're honest. You lost once against Lyon and once against Sparta Prague. Other than that, you had wins and draws. Overall, how happy are you with your European campaign and how the team sort of performed, results aside?
For me, I think that we have we've done the minimum that we've expected in terms of getting out of the group. That's what we would expect going into the Europa League, because we are a team, and we've shown over the last few years that we're more than capable of making it to the knockout stages of this competition. For us, in terms of our mentality, especially right now, anything from here on in is purely a bonus, because our priority is absolutely on the league. We want to retain our league title. It's a very important league to win this season, as the winners of the league would gain automatic qualification for the Champions League group stage. That would be a huge achievement for us in terms of what that brings, financially, as well as the prestige of that as well.
Yeah, you just said that. I think, if I remember correctly, when you won the league title last season, that qualified you for third or second Champions League playoff round or so. Is that correct?
It was the third, yeah.
Yeah. So if I don't know, is it down to coefficient, or why is the Scottish Premiership now have a seeded group stage place for the league winner?
Well, Stefan, the reason for that is because Rangers has done so damn well in the Europa League over the last few seasons. We've been carrying Scotland in that respect. Yes, that's right. I feel the seethe from anyone who's listening who doesn't like us already, and I frankly welcome it. Our performances in Europe, in terms of the results that we've gained and the points that we've built up over the last few seasons, along with what the other lot have done as well, to a lesser extent, but that certainly helped, having two teams, making it to the second stages of European competitions. That does help bring things up a wee bit in terms of that. And that's what that's culminated in. But I think it's only for this season, because I think there's other other nations have actually performed well. So I don't think it would be a repeat, the following season. So I think that's the reason why. So that's why a lot of focus for
that really raises the stakes. And if you look at the league table, you're 1 point behind the other team.
It's a proper title race this season. It's
can't imagine what that is.
Yeah, I didn't want to say, but yeah, it's certainly not good for the nerves, I think, for anyone who's got a vested interest. That's for sure. So yeah, if you're saying to fans, you'll not disgrace yourselves in this round, but this will be where the Europa League journey ends for this season. Yeah, fans would be absolutely fine with it. They get there's some people get a trip, not as many as what it should be, but some people get a trip out to Dortmund, to watch the team in a very, very good stadium in a European football sense. And then we get to host them at Ibrox in the second leg, and hopefully there's still plenty to play for, and it'll be a great atmosphere in that sense. But it's in no way would it feel like a disaster for us to go out. It would only be a disappointment if we didn't do ourselves credit in terms of the way we perform, in terms of the scoreline, because we've proven over the past few seasons that we deserve to be at this level, and we deserve to feel like we can hold our own, certainly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and really want to see Dortmund to really, take care of business in the home leg already, because I don't think any Dortmund player would appreciate, the hell that is Ibrox to rain down on them if things are not going their way. So from that standpoint, I hope it's going to be, easy breezy coasting, but I just have a hunch that it's just not going to be that way, especially not this season. So James, before I let you go, I'll ask you for a scoreline prediction. And then please also plug the podcast if listeners want to hear more from your perspective ahead of this game.
These never end well whenever you're asking to predict. So it's always a tough one. Listen, I think if I was to think what a good result would be for us, a 2-1 defeat would certainly be okay. Although that's obviously
a 3-2 defeat would even be better.
Well, of course, the lack of away goals now obviously makes that less of a thing. But if we're, what I mean by that, 2-1 or 3-2 or whatever, if we're still in the tie.
Has the away goal rule been disabled?
Yeah, that's done that.
Huh? I didn't realize it did.
Yeah.
I think it did for the Champions League, but I wasn't quite sure if it also counts for the Europa League. So I'm the most well prepared podcast host in the universe right now. Good thing for pointing that out.
Unless someone has told me a massive fib on that one.
I'm sure they didn't.
No, so. I'm sure not. No. But no, yeah, if we're going into that and there's still a chance, I think that's a good result. I believe that Dortmund will want to make sure that they try and finish the tie as best they can in the first leg. So I think it will be a tough one. I never predict against my team, so it's going to be a 2-1 Rangers win on Thursday night. Thank you very much.
I'll take that as a prediction.
Yeah, that's fine with me. And if people want to hear more from us, we are heart and hand. We are on Patreon. If you have an interest in terms of that, we cover all things Rangers as well as other football discussions. I talk about European football as well, including discussions on Bundesliga, of course, as well as all sorts of different types of topics that we cover on the site. So you're welcome to that. Or we also do our weekly shows as well, if you have an interest in that. So yeah, you're more than welcome to have a listen to us. And here's hoping there's still plenty to talk about going into the second leg, Stefan.
Yeah, sure. All right, so that's it from all of us from the Yellowwallpod this week. We shall be back with review of the Europa League tie against Glasgow Rangers, and of course a review of the Gladbach game next week. So plenty to discuss then, I assume. You can follow James at Harden Hummus. I think I hope I got that right, on Twitter. And you can good. You can follow me at Stefan Butzko on Twitter as well. You can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to subscribe to the show, go to theyellowwall.net for all the information you need. We are also on Patreon, on patreon.com/theyellowwall. If you want to support us, sponsor an episode or whatnot, please read up on that. And yeah, that's all I have left to say, other than, as always, thank you for listening and goodbye.